Yes. Friends, my dear MAPOC brothers and sisters, as you take your seats, I can tell how social you want to be. And we even have that planned for, too. I'm going to ask my colleague, Will Reed, to hand out a little flyer. We are basically going to have dinner immediately after we're done, when our final word has been given. We'll meet up back at the Regatta Bar and Grill, which is the hotel and the Waterfront Place Hotel, the conference hotel. And we'll have dinner there. We have a table reserved that should accommodate most of us. But, you know, at 5 o'clock or so on a Saturday afternoon, I think there's some flexibility there. And the Suburban will be available to give rides. Those of you who want to get a quick bite and dash will have that opportunity. And those who want to linger, well, you know, we'll linger. So I want to make that announcement. And second of all weekend you have seen the various senior administration of the university and of the law school, and it is right and proper that we acknowledge them one more time. Our president, Dr. Gee, our provost, Joyce McConnell, our vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion, David Freisen, who has stayed most afternoon with us but had to go, and sends his regards. Our interim dean, Gregory Bowman, our associate dean for faculty development and faculty research and development, or faculty development and research. Ann LaFaso, I'm trying to give a shout out. She's here. She was a partner in all this as well. We want to acknowledge her, as well as associate dean for administration, Gregory Elkins, and our many staff and support and WVU catering. The list goes on, and the danger of giving compliments is that you'll leave people out. But it took a village to make MAPOC happen, and I want to thank all my friends and neighbors for contributing to this event. I will pass along all your high praise, and at the same time, I hope, as Vice President Freisen says, you don't be shy about telling your story to your friends and neighbors where you all are about being at WVU. This has been a place that has been very good to me, and I hope that this weekend you saw a taste of that so that you can know the kind of community that we take pride in here at this university. Having said that, there are two people in particular who have been with us all weekend, who have supported us in some ways that you've seen, in many ways that you haven't, and we want to acknowledge them. First, Louis Mackley. Come on out, Louis. He's literally been behind the scenes the entire weekend, taking care of our tech. And we have something for you. So we want to give you this token of our appreciation. So thank you. And Margaret Obush, come on down. We want to thank you. So nominally, I'm the site chair, but quite frankly, organization was in full partnership with Margaret. Margaret and I would sit and have meetings after meetings after meetings. Then there would be like the real meeting after the formal meeting. You know how that is. But Margaret has been patient and kind and thoughtful, has at times told us the reality of things, at times helped us make informed decisions. And for all of this, we are grateful. There is so much that you do see and so much that you is good that you haven't seen. And that is all because of Margaret's effort. So we want to thank you very much. And the final thing I want to say, and And had I told him I was going to do this, he would have told me no, so I didn't tell him. So when Will and I brought the conference here, we had a conversation. And we realized that the timing of it was such that there was going to be a lot on my plate this past fall. And Will said to me, I will take the lead and you on the program, and then you and I will work together as to the logistical plans. And then once your fall is over, you will do the back end work and do what you've seen today and all weekend, which is doing all the running around in the room work, which was a great plan when we discussed it back last March. Of course, the fall went as it did, and then for reasons not worth going into here, January exploded. And because I ended up not being as available as I wanted to be, Will stepped up. All those welcome emails that you got, I had wanted to send them, but Will stepped up to send them. All of the other emails and communications and phone calls and conversations that you didn't see that helped make all this happen, but I saw them because Will copied me on every single one of them. He took the initiative, some of them at 3 in the morning. And we actually had a few dialogues where he sent it at 3 in the morning on his way to bed. I saw it at 3:30 as I was getting up, which ought to say something about us, but maybe we'll get therapy later. I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, in as much as it was a real partnership where I was the speaking partner, Will Rhee was the silent partner, but in his behind-the-scenes work, the impact was tremendous. So in terms of recognizing the folks in the room who shepherded this from the University of Baltimore last year to West Virginia University this year, I cannot end the thank yous without thanking William Rhee. Come on. And with that, and I am sure that our conference chair, Reggie Robinson, will mention this, but I want to make sure, we've said it a couple of times already, but put it on your calendar now. Last weekend of January 2016 at American University, Washington College of Law, Washington, D.C., Ezra Rosser has volunteered to coordinate and facilitate our presence there next year. So please plan on it. You will see a call for papers and all the logistics coming forthwith. Hopefully you kind of give us tacit permission anyway to use all the emails we collected to inform you. So put that on your calendar. It's been a pleasure being site chair and in helping you all and helping all of us learn a lot more. And now I will turn it over to Professor Robinson, our conference chair, to give closing remarks and to launch us onto the final word.
Thank you, Atiba.
I have the conference bio.
I will not be long in these remarks, but I have to tell you that as much praise as we heap on Will, it really is not enough. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning when I saw his stuff going out. He set our agenda. He was aware of what needed to be done. He would task us. I've never worked with anybody like that, and the two of them together formed this excellent team, along with Margaret and others here who made this all work really, really smoothly. I can't say enough. Thank you. Thank you. We are successful this year because these two and a cohort of people I just met were able to do something at this university that made it all work out. So I have the task, because I'm trying not to delay us, because we had a very long day yesterday. We're probably still feeling it today. I found myself nodding out at people's really excellent presentations. I hope I offended no one, but that's what happened. So, Kim Ford Masri. I met him years ago. I think it was even in the context of MAPOC.
Penn State Dickinson. At Penn State in 2001.
Yes, yes. So since then, he and I have been affiliated. We tend to find ourselves together, usually in this venue. And I can tell you that, without much exaggeration, he's been one of our loyal supporters. He's always involved. And I can remember one year when we were at Temple, and we were working through MAPOC, and we had the business meeting, and we had decided that in the coming year we would not put together a MAPOC regional because the national was getting ready to take place. And then I was informed that I was a little late. Kim had already organized the next meeting at Virginia. And so we decided that we couldn't get in the way of that he is such a devotee to our enterprise and our cause and our mission, that whatever he put together, that would have to be in place, and MAPOC and NAPOC, the national, NAPOC, would have to still go forward. But this is Kim. His background, he is Michigan, I think it's double Michigan. He is a go blue. He has a profoundly interesting academic background. I won't go into details except that lots of law days and lots of at both the undergraduate and at the law school. He is a University of Virginia Law School faculty member. He is an eminent scholar. He is a highly productive scholar. But most important, he is one of the key sort of members of our community at MAPOC, and it is my honor to introduce Kim Ford Masri as our final word speaker. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for sticking it out to the end, the sweet end, hopefully. When I was honored by Reggie and Will and Atiba in being asked to give the final word, my initial reaction was, I thought that was for like senior people, people with experience so that they have some wisdom to impart. And then I started realizing that I've been in the academy, this is my 19th year. So I'm titling my remarks, Coming of Age in the Legal Academy, 18 years in law teaching. And someone I wish I could ask to give this word, or at least ask to give me advice for this word, is my dad, Ali Masri. Unfortunately, he passed away this past October. He was a prolific scholar, a dedicated teacher, and a loving family man. He lived a full and inspiring life to 81 years old. And as for those of you who have lost someone close, it led me to reflect on the meaning of life and the purpose of life, and I thought that would be appropriate for this occasion. So I was thinking, what if I'm fortunate enough to make it to the ripe old age of 81? What would I ask myself, reflecting back on my career, based on my own observations? And so I share two different kinds of questions about a career in law teaching, based on my own observations at a top 10 school. And I emphasize that because that is, at least officially, a mark of recognition if you're in the top tier. And one shouldn't infer that the observations I'm going to make are based on anyone at the University of Virginia. I've also visited at other top institutions, and I have friends at other top institutions. So don't infer any particular story or observation is necessarily occurring at Virginia. I know we're being live streamed, so I'm trying to keep my students interviewed. Anyhow, so I loosely will categorize it into the three things that we think about when we think of our profession: teaching, scholarship, and institutional citizenship. So anyway, the first question, and then I'll get to the second question later. The first question would be, if I reflect back on my life, did I get ahead? Did I achieve career advancement? And if that's the question I want to ask myself, then these are some lessons I would tell myself. Well, if I want to be able to answer yes to those questions, one thing I might want to do, based on observations of people who've achieved recognition at top-tier schools, is to exhibit traits such as certainty, superiority, cynicism, and disparagement towards others. You might throw in some side traits like arrogance, sarcasm, mockery. And I should emphasize, too, this is by no means common to all people at top schools, but I do notice often those who, in some ways, achieve the highest levels of recognition exhibit these traits. So in teaching, there are people who, both from their own accounts and from stories I've heard from students, stories like first day of law school. A student is called on by this professor to briefly summarize the facts of the case. So, the student, nervous but diligently, stayed up late, briefing the cases, and dutifully summarizes all the facts of the case. So the professor's response is, "I said briefly." And of course, the rest of the audience bursts into laughter while this student becomes red in the face. The same professor reportedly in another class, when a student respectfully said something challenging to the professor said, "Be careful, I could run circles around you." This professor went on to become a dean at a top 10 law school. Another professor, senior colleague, I was telling a story about when I called on a woman in class and she wasn't answering me. And so I asked her if she wanted co-counsel, and she nodded, and I moved on to the next student. She came to me after class, to my office. I didn't know she was, and I'm legally blind, and so when she appeared in my office, I didn't know who it was, and she wasn't saying anything. But I could tell someone was there, and I was like, "May I help you?" So she's not saying anything, so I come around the corner, and then I realize she's just crying. So I instinctively put my hand on her shoulder and got her a tissue. And she explained to me that she had just gotten her grades from first semester. This was second semester, and she was just really upset and froze when I called on her. She said, "It wasn't anything about me. I was an intimidating professor." I was like, "Oh, really? I'm trying here." But anyway, I'm telling this story, and this senior colleague, I think I didn't even have tenure yet at the time, so I want to learn what they expect. And he said, "That was a big mistake. If a student's crying in my office, I say, 'Hold on, let me go get you some tissues,' and then I just leave." This professor was actually even laterally hired to a higher school within the top 10. And then my final anecdote in this category is another professor who just said that when I was asking, like, "What do you do when you get a hard question?" He says, "Student asks me a question, I say, I ask the questions." This professor went on to become a dean at a top 5 school. Don't infer what school or who. Moving along, in scholarship, we see traits of certainty, boastfulness, a degree of arrogance that only what I have to say matters and what other people have to say has been ignorant and inadequate, and we all know the attitude that many top scholars exhibit towards things like critical race theory, normative scholarship, social justice scholarship. I think one of my students says, yeah, they think it's frou-frou. And then with respect to institutional citizenship, or in a sense, how they interact with other members of the community, with other professors, sometimes at a workshop, there'll be someone from another school. Some of these professors might, audibly roll their eyes or chuckle or ask a question that you can tell is designed to make the workshop presenter look stupid, something that MAPOC eschews. Or they'll speak disparagingly of tenured faculty who aren't productive enough. I say productive in quotes because they don't know all what that person is doing in their life. They're just looking at their publications. Or cynicism towards non-tenured faculty like legal writing or clinical professors. And that's just professors. If you talk about staff, I could tell you stories about clerical staff, IT staff, maintenance being berated by professors, including deans. And of course, housekeeping staff don't exist. But if your goal is to get ahead and achieve recognition, then perhaps these are things I should do better to emulate. But a second kind of question that one would ask myself, and I think it's a question I like better, is did I do good? Did I love well? Now, I caution to myself, remember, that might not get you career recognition, popularity. Top-ranked students in course evals are often the students or the professors who have the reputation for being the most arrogant and intimidating. So being nice isn't going to get you ahead, but let's suggest I ask myself, did I do good or love well? Well, then that suggests to me a different set of traits, in some ways the contrast. Being open to uncertainty, the limits of one's own knowledge, which doesn't mean insecurity, but actually means the intellectual courage to recognize where one is ignorant. Equality toward others, and respect for others, and a degree of modesty. In teaching, that would mean in the classroom, challenging students, but working with them, respecting that they are equal to you in moral value, and if a student doesn't know an answer or has to miss class, don't assume they didn't have a good reason. And outside of class with students, I told you about the student who cried in my office, and I don't want to say I'm always living up to doing well, but I think sometimes I've happened to do well. And sometimes in ways that have actually saved me from my own self-doubts. My first year of teaching constitutional law, I was reading my course evaluations. I thought I had done a good job, but pretty soon I had to break out the box of tissues. And I recall some to this day, too much 14th Amendment, too much civil rights, liberal, liberal, liberal. And I recall one in particular, which now just seems funny, but it says, Professor Ford Mazrui fits the stereotype of a black liberal law professor who is legally blind. And I was like, wow, I didn't know there were enough of us to have a stereotype. Where are they? I need some friends. But just as I was about to run out of tissues, I came across one that said, finally, a professor who focuses on the human underlying side of the law, not just the economic side. I was thinking of transferring away from UVA, but thanks to Professor Ford Mazrui, I'm going to stick it out. And many of you, I know, have many more stories of students you've touched. And they're often, as you know, the more marginalized students, first generation, often but not necessarily students of color, female students, students who I've been fortunate enough to be invited to their weddings. One student in particular who I hired as my research assistant, she did the best exam in my race and law seminar. She was extremely active and engaging. And we were talking about her experiences on other classes, and she says she never says anything in other classes, which surprised me because she was such an active participant and such a quality writer in my class. And she said, well, I just don't feel comfortable, especially in classes run by white males, which is, basically virtually all of the other classes that she's had. She does feel more comfortable in female taught classes. So I was pleased that despite not being female, she felt comfortable in my class. And she said, well, you're different. And in this case, I knew to take that as a compliment. In scholarship, it's not a sexy or cocky, but I try to be, again, open to my own uncertainty, the boring, reasonable, acknowledging the legitimacy of opposing sides. Some people say you're too charitable, but we're just trying to work through very difficult issues, and I try to respect different positions. And with respect to people in my own community, whether they're professors or staff, I at least do my best, and I credit my father for modeling this. His greeting to the dean or provost would be no warmer, no less gracious than his greeting to, the custodian in the elevator. And he would slap us metaphorically if he ever saw us as children growing up acting any differently. And sometimes I've been privileged that staff have come to me with their problems. Sometimes they then won't allow me to go higher up, but I think it's helped them just to be able to vent about how they've been treated by another professor, and again, sometimes the dean. One anecdote I'll end with is a clerical staff said, you're different, Kim. A lot of the other professors around here, they just walk by us in the hallway and don't say hi and don't really even acknowledge us unless they need us for something, whereas you see us. And then she said, and that's kind of ironic because you don't see so well. So returning to my dad did good, and he loved well, and may I and let us do the same. Thank you. Thank you. And whoever can join for dinner, let's